hi everybody, and welcome to this new project for First Presbyterian. My name is Michael Rogers. I'm a pretty new member of First Pres, and we call this Go Ahead and Ask with our transitional pastor, Bruce Mulder. Bruce, thanks so much for taking some time to assist us with this communications outreach program, something designed to help engage all of us as members, and if you're a non-member, to help understand what First Presbyterian is all about, First Presbyterian of Farmington Hills. We intend this to be a very casual Q&A. Correct. Bruce and I just talking about different kinds of things relating to our faith and our church. And we encourage everyone to send in questions, email them to the church, buttonhole somebody here when you come to Sunday service. And gosh, there's all kinds of stuff that we can ask Bruce. So I'm not sure we intend to stump you, but we
believe me, you will.
Well, we certainly hope to tap into your experience and expertise and help enrich all of our faith lives and our understanding and participation in the church. Be sure to like this video podcast on YouTube, share it with your friends and neighbors. If you want to tell people how to find it, it's posted on the website and on the First Presbyterian Church of Farmington Hills website, and that's how you can find it. Of course, if you're watching this, you found it already, so that's kind of circular reasoning. So anyway, we're glad to have you here and glad that you're watching. Well, Bruce, let's get started. And I think a question I have is maybe just introduce yourself. I think you have an interesting backstory of how you came to the ministry. And maybe you just say a few words about that to start
I'll be glad to. My name is Bruce Mulder, and I was called to ministry as a second career. I started ministry when I was 37, and before that I was in radio. And I never had any intention of doing ministry, but I had this unshakable, never going away kind of nagging, you got to do this. Had no idea why I had to do it, that is why I had to go to seminary, but I did, and this month I start my 26th year of ministry in various capacities in various places with various job titles.
Well, I think it's particularly interesting because we have somewhat similar backgrounds. I was in radio when I was very young. Didn't have quite as an exalted career as you did. I transitioned into association work. But it's certainly clear for those of us who've had the opportunity and privilege to hear your sermons that you have a tremendous communication skills and a way to keep the Word of God interesting, your interpretation and so on, very interesting and engaging for us. In your time that you've had so far here with First Presbyterian, do you have a sense of kind of the strengths of our ministry here?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, there is a good sense of community here. People like each other, which, believe it or not, sometimes in churches is not the norm. People like each other here, they hang out together, and there is a common focus of the community to go into the world and serve, and also they call themselves the Church of the Open Hands, which indicates that, but it also indicates, come be our guest. Anyone's welcomed here. No exclusions. Everybody can come here and just be yourself and be part of the family here. That's the greatest strength, and that's what will be evident as we go through the process of looking for the next full-time pastor, that she or he will fit right in and things will start up very smoothly.
In your experience, is it easy, difficult to maintain that sense of openness, those open hands to everyone?
It depends, obviously, on the congregation, but I don't know generally speaking, but I have seen times where either a congregation becomes what they call in clinical terms anxious, that is to say, they do something called herding, H-E-R-D-N-I-G, because something has changed within the congregation. Usually a pastor has left or there's been a crisis. And so the congregation becomes very anxious and they herd, they draw together and they're all anxious together. So that can happen. And then the goal is to just provide some stability and say, it's okay, you're allowed to be anxious, it's completely normal, and just continue the journey and watch the anxiety kind of go away. And I think this is my 7th congregation, my 3rd interim. There are always wide ranges and varieties of systems, and you know, there are always times of either Crisis, conflict. Conflict is nothing new in the church, and surprisingly, usually it's not handled very well, but it's par for the course. You know, the church is a group of human beings who are trying faithfully to listen to God and to serve Jesus. And we don't always do that well, but hopefully our hearts are in the right place. I have my many failings and faults.
Well, I hesitate to ask you if there's any weaknesses in our church because, of course, out of our hubris, we imagine that we are perfection personified, but I suspect that we're facing some of the same challenges that many other congregations are, which is trying to grow or at least maintain membership and increase participation in church activities.
Right. The weaknesses would really be more areas that you all would want to focus on and not look at them in a negative light and say, oh, wow, shame on us. But you're par for the course with most mainline Protestant congregations in the U.S., older congregation, looking for families and people to come in and be part of the home and learning how to go about that, how to do that. That's completely normal right now. That's not really a weakness. That's an area that in the mission study, which is part of the process of getting to your next new pastor, we, the team who's assembled, will explore that and explain that so that the next new pastor who comes in here, he or she can say, okay, here are some ideas, and you're not going to be relying solely on him or her and say, just do it, but you're going to say, okay, we're going to work on this together.
Bruce, one of the things that I've had the privilege to participate in is a men's fellowship breakfast. Every Tuesdays we meet at Leo's Coney Island near the corner of Drake and 12 Mile. And those guys came up with some questions to bounce off you. Again, just a reminder that if any of you viewers would like to send us some questions, email them to the church office or talk to myself or Bruce, and we'll make sure we get those in the pipeline. So does being spiritual but not religious make sense? You hear that a lot in the media. You hear it talking to people personally. They say, well, you know, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. Does that make any sense?
I'm going to use the movie Smokey and the Bandit as an illustration, if you've ever seen that movie. But there's a scene where Burt Reynolds is with, I can't think of her name.
Sally Fields.
Sally Field, thank you. And they're trying to talk to each other, but he's from a different culture and she's from a different culture, and they're saying the same thing, but they're using different words, because in her world, this word has this definition, and in his world, these words have these definitions, and they're not the same. That's where I would start. I would say, if someone says to me, I'm spiritual or not religious, I would say to them, can you help me understand how you define spiritual and religious, and then have the conversation there. For me, there is no, okay, this is absolutely the definition of religious or the definition of spiritual. My guess is that people who say they're spiritual but not religious, for whatever reason, have decided that being a part of a church is not for them, and it could be a various numbers of reasons, but that would be my guess. And I'm okay with it. It's someone saying, I'm seeking, and that's who we are as followers of Jesus. We're seeking, looking, finding, but always seeking.
It certainly has been, in my experience with talking with non-religious people, relatives, friends, there's still a void that seeks to be filled. It seems very human, and it's a challenge to help them find a way to fill that. It's, as you probably know, it's not something where you can grab them by the collar and shake them and say, come to First Pres.
That's the worst thing you can do. The best thing you can do is say, hey, I'd like to have you come to church on Sunday with me. Or if they're reluctant to attend a worship service, say, hey, we've got this men's breakfast that meets every Tuesday morning. Love for you to check it out. Or we've got this ministry. I think it'd be something you would enjoy. And then when you offer that to them, especially for a ministry in a congregation, try not to make it sound like they're going to be doing this in perpetuity, like forever and ever, but say to them, hey, why don't you come to the next 3 meetings of this? And if it's your cup of tea, awesome. And if it's not, that's okay.
Yeah.
But the offering and the invitation goes out, and it's given.
Yeah. In the case of our men's breakfast, maybe your cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Or cup of tea. So I got more questions from our men's group, and they're kind of jumping around, so they're
That's
not
fine.
following a particular theme here. So one question is, how many authors of the Psalms are there?
Ooh, that's a good one. There is more than one. According to tradition, David is the author of more than any of them, but there is a Psalm of Moses, Psalms of the sons of Korah. There are other authors. There are some that are unknown. So 3 at least, probably more. And the thing I like about the Psalms is that they range all over the place. They explore and elaborate within the context of living a life with God, every human emotion, everything from elation to just being flat out angry, just, pissed, and that's how it is. And that's what I love about the Psalms is their earthiness and their humanity in them, that they're trying either to praise God or to say, why is this happening? Because I don't understand it, which is very human, very human.
So I have a question about parables. And you have addressed those several times in your commentary and sermons. Why are they so often obscure and difficult to understand? It would seem like, why didn't Jesus just be clearer to us modern audiences?
That's a good question. There is a text either in Matthew's gospel or Mark's or maybe both where Jesus quotes, I believe, Isaiah, and he says essentially, the reason I speak in parables is so that people who can't hear won't hear, and people who can't see don't see. Something to that effect. And the question is, even in that, is Jesus there being hyperbolic? Is he exaggerating? He's saying, I speak in parables so certain people won't know? Or is he saying, I speak in parables because their hearts are stone and their eyes don't see and their ears are closed off? I like the latter. That seems more like Jesus, seems much more like God. The heart is stone, and so Jesus speaks in a story to which everybody knows a story. Everybody can follow the track of a story. And for me, that's why he does it.
And in a sense also it's poetry, which speaks to the human heart more so than the human intellect.
Right. It speaks from everyday life. There's whether they're allegorical or metaphorical or just here's what they are. They're straight up story. Jesus looked around the world and observed and incorporated what he saw and what he did and what he heard into his parables, so that people of that day would say, "Oh, I know what a sower is. I know what it feels like to stub my toe in something. Maybe not a buried treasure, but I know what that feels like. I know what it's like when I'm at the end of my rope and I keep going back to God and say, I want justice. I know what that's like." Yeah.
I was struck by a commentary I heard one time that reminded us that the words of Jesus and the parables were shaped for an audience 2,000 years ago.
Right.
Rural people.
Right.
Farmers. How do you make that relevant to a modern age of the internet and computers and jet travel and all the distractions we have today?
For me, I try and make it say the parable is this, and in our world it may look or sound like this. That being said, to get that at that point, usually I don't have how to do that, and then something comes in your brain or your heart, and for we who follow Jesus, we believe that to be the Holy Spirit saying, oh, here's an idea. And it's never anything flashing lights, ringing bells. It's just, oh, I never thought of that before. That's the way I try and do it. Or to put it in context is essentially what I'm saying, is to say, yeah, this is an odd parable. Vast majority of people in this culture, they're not farmers. They have no idea. I don't know. I didn't grow up on a farm. I don't know what a mustard seed looks like. So you try and contextualize it, and at the same time still be true to the point that as you see it, as you're working to proclaim it, as you see it, say, this is, I think, what Jesus is trying to say in this. And the other thing about a parable is you can hear the same parable 50 times and you can take away 50 different meanings from them. There is no, it's absolutely this, to your point, it is poetry. It's absolutely this, and poetry invites us into life, and that's what Jesus is doing. So you want to know what it's like? It's like this, like this. It's not the thing itself, but it's very much like this.
Do you have a favorite parable?
My favorite would be one that I still really haven't figured out. It's the parable of the dishonest manager. I believe it's in Luke. And I remember when I was in seminary, I went to my favorite professor, the late Dr. Jim Cook, and I said to him, "What is this parable about?" I think it's in Luke 16. And I remember Jim was one of the most gracious people on the face of the planet. And he looked at it and he said, "This one's a real corker." And I was so amused, not funny, but just so amused and heartened by that here was this man and he didn't know, and I was okay with that. And then when I got home, I wrote it on the side of my margin. I can still see it in my mind's eye. This is a corker, Jim Cook, 1997. That would be, I guess, my favorite, or the prodigal for the reason of the immensity of God's love and just all out running to us, just continually running to us. Not making us wait, not making us feel pain or shame or anger, but running to us and saying, "Oh, you're mine, you're alive, you're here, oh, I love you."
Yeah. Here's a pop culture question.
Oh, good.
So sort of think of the Da Vinci Code. Are there really, as we hear in media and movies and so forth, are there really secret or suppressed books of the Bible that people are trying to keep from us?
I have no idea.
I guess if they were secret and suppressed, we wouldn't know, right?
I guess. I know there are books that did not make it into what we understand to be the New Testament canon, the Gospel of Thomas, and there are other Gospels. And I don't know enough about it to say why they didn't make it into the canon, into what we call the New Testament. Those exist. If there are secret ones, I don't know.
Yeah.
Be interesting if there were.
Yeah.
Someone will break them out and say, here's what it is.
I've heard people say or read that, there were a bunch of these old guys who picked and chose amongst the depictions and testimonies that they wanted to include, so how can we really trust that stuff?
Right. And you've got that even with the four Gospels that are in our New Testament. They're similar, but they're vastly different for vastly different reasons as well.
Okay, another pop culture question.
Oh, good.
And
I'm 0 for 1.
So, all right, so this comes from the men's breakfast, so we're going to take this with a grain of salt.
You all really have good, deep conversations,
we do,
don't you?
yeah.
All right.
I'm not sure how deep they are, but they are conversations.
That's great.
So considering your previous career in radio broadcasting, wouldn't you agree that the music of the 60s is the best ever?
It's the best? No, but I would say the best song, in my humble opinion, of the 60s is Papa Was a Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Out of everything in the 60s.
Yeah.
For me, bar none, that's better than anything. I grew up listening to the 70s and then played the 80s. So for me, 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's music. That's when people could sing and they could harmonize. Anything after, I'm so old, anything after kind of 1993, 1994,
Right.
I'm simply not interested in. I don't know it.
Yeah, I was struck by the hymn today that had a refrain, "Let it be, Lord, let it be." And I thought,
Yeah.
holy cow, Paul McCartney, let it be.
Yeah, writing to Mother Mary, who knows, yeah.
So continuing on with pop culture, I guess this is on the minds of our men in the fellowship group. How do you feel about the depiction of religion in media, movies, television, podcasts, all that kind of stuff?
Ooh. I don't know that I really have ever thought about that. I know there are certain movies or certain shows that will allegedly want to show Christianity in a less than ideal light, and there are other ones that are more faithful to it. I'm trying to think of the shows that I watch and if they really have any sort of either covert or overt theme one way or the other. I really can't think of anything.
I suspect it's a reflection of the kinds of men and women who write scripts in Hollywood, that they may not be necessarily focused on religion. Those who are maybe are writing for Christian networks or specifically aimed at believers.
Yeah, and I think this is where I worked in a Christian radio station when I was in seminary, and the valuable lesson I took out of that is that all music is God's gift. It's what's done with it. In other words, Christian music isn't the only music that can bring glory to God. You can listen to just about anything and be grateful to God for the gift of music. So I would say the same thing with the writers or the producers, is that there may be writers, producers, and directors who are Christian, but they don't express it or portray it in that way. Just as maybe, your dentist is a Christian, but what you want more than anything is you want your dentist who knows what she's doing when she's giving you a crown. Okay, you're a Christian, that's great. What I want from you right now is to take care of my teeth because I'm in agony here. So I kind of go that way, say, okay, Christian music, it's fine, but it doesn't mean that anything that's not Christian music is either unholy or less than ideal, let's say.
That evil rock and roll that not our parents, but maybe our grandparents warned us about.
Yeah, that's before my time. Not the whole, the before my time is Elvis and them and the Beatles and the British invasion, coming. I was listening to music in the 70s, and there's nothing morally or ethically wrong with listening to Boston or Chicago or the Dire Straits. These people are incredible musicians, and some of them are very talented lyricists as well. And you can listen to them and say, wow, that's, that'll preach. That'll be something that I can use, not just me, but anybody can say, I can incorporate that idea into my Christian life. Nothing's original.
We're very blessed here at First Presbyterian to have Sherry as our music director, and just with the choir and the help that they give, and it's a tremendous accessory, the way it accentuates our prayer groups and worship service is really fantastic. Well, Bruce, I'm going to kind of be going for about 20 minutes. I want to wrap things up with, let me ask you, is there something that you would like to ask yourself?
Can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'll just ask that people email us or drop something off at the church or call us and ask their question. Go ahead and ask. That's why we're here. And we want to have fun with this. We want to be serious about it and understand that no one has all the answers, but we want to try and just engage with people, meet them where they are, as Jesus did, and go from there.
Bruce, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to meet with us and help us launch this communications outreach. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening to Go Ahead and Ask with our transitional pastor, Bruce Mulder. My name is Michael Rogers. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again next month.